Today I'm going to talk about visualization and a cluttered versus well-organized presentation. Now, when you make your presentation, you want to make sure that you're not overwhelming your brain, like the cognitive load theory states. Too much can be too much. Keep it simple. So when you're creating a presentation, you want to have a few things in mind. For effective visualization, you need to think about the typography, the screen design, and the media. Now, one of these components isn't more important than the other, so you need to make sure that you're keeping in mind all three of these when you're creating your presentation. Typography can have a few components. So you can have the font, which you can see over here to the left. You have 4 different fonts. Some are easier to read than others. You need to consider the size of your font and whether you're highlighting certain words within your presentation. Now, it's important to also remember the audience that you're presenting to. Which font would be easier for them to read? What size do you think would be appropriate for them? Here's an example of poor typography. You'll see that the highlighting up above, you have a dark font and, a dark background and a light font. You have bright lime green and yellow. They're just challenging to read. I don't recommend using these fonts and these colors in a presentation. In addition to typography, you need to think about the screen design, which includes the grouping of information and the amount of information. You want to make sure that you're bulleting your information and not writing everything down on the screen. You don't want to create a presentation where you're reading directly from the slides. That can be boring and you can lose the attention of your audience. Here's an example of good grouping of information. This was taken from Professor Moody's rubric. You can see that all of the standards of the assignment are clearly defined. You can even think back to the typography. The font you selected was great, or that Moody selected was great. You can see that each of the scores are highlighted in red. It's a great example of grouping of information. And like I said before, when you're creating presentations, you do not want to have an entire paragraph or an article written and read directly from it. This is too much information. You're going to lose your audience's attention. And if you wanted someone to read a paragraph, give them a handout. You don't need to read directly from a slide. The final aspect of good visualization within a presentation is media. Now, this includes graphics. You could have audio, a video, or even some animation. Now, even thinking back to screen design, this is probably too much information on one slide. The topic of the slide would be the Pythagorean theorem, and you can see in the background I have a right triangle. So with the background, the graphics, the animation, the video, it's just too much. If it were me, I would revise the slide. I would select maybe 2 images. You could have a graphic and an animation, and you're getting the same point across. You're talking about the Pythagorean theorem. You can explain in more detail about each graphic and animation. You don't need to have too much to overwhelm your audience. So in conclusion, you need to think about, when you're creating your presentation, the typography, the screen design, and media. You want to make sure that you have a nice, organized presentation and it is not too cluttered. And when you keep these three components in mind, you will create a great presentation.